Hey everyone, Classic WoW's first life cycle is coming to an end, and Classic TBC is around the corner. If the leaks are to be trusted, we should all be playing Classic TBC as early as 3.5 months from now. But even with the game being so close to releasing, we still didn't get any official words from Blizzard yet. And there is still very little we know about how they will decide to release it. In this video, we're gonna go over 6 big concerns the community still has about Classic TBC and how Blizzard will go about releasing it. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more TBC videos like this in the future. With that said, sit down, relax, and let's talk about 6 of our biggest concerns for our most anticipated game, Classic TBC. Number 1. PvP servers and faction imbalance. Faction balance is a big factor of how enjoyable the game is for Burning Crusade, specifically if you're playing on a PvP server. For Classic WoW currently, we have a gigantic map with multiple high-level zones, all containing all the resources one could need. And yet, with the increase in server max population, compared to how it was back in 2006, it feels almost impossible to farm anything in the outside world, specifically if your faction is outnumbered in a PvP server. Another downside of faction imbalance is PvP queues, be it for Battlegrounds or Arena. Currently in Classic WoW, queuing for a BG on Alliance side is almost instant, whereas doing so on Horde side can take upwards of tens of minutes. And depending on whether Blizzard decides to implement battle groups for Arena and Battlegrounds, like how it was back in the day, depending on the battle group your server is on, this issue will still be present if you're playing on Horde. In fact, I expect it to get worse as TBC will grow older. The reason being that currently, the best faction for raiding is objectively Alliance. And the reason is simple: Paladins. Paladins' blessings simply don't compare to what Shamans offer in terms of utility for the raid, and the fact that the top 100 guilds in the world are predominantly Alliance all but proves that. But for TBC, Horde will now get access to Paladins. Combine that with the completely unrivaled racials that pretty much every Horde race has, and you will see a complete 180 on the top 100 list. It's going to be filled with red guild names. Is that going to be enough to convince current Alliance players to switch to Horde? Probably not. At least not at first. The majority of players are still very attached to their characters, and I think abandoning your character and jumping to another faction is not something many players will do. But as time goes, and as Classic TBC grows older, I think we will see more and more players making Horde characters and slowly switching sides. And then there's the fact that Blood Elves are simply the best looking race across both factions, so there's that to consider. To be fair, I don't know at this point if there is anything that Blizzard could do to combat faction imbalance. Private servers went as far as offering free respecs, free mounts, and upwards of 5 times more XP and better racials for Alliance to combat faction imbalance. But starting to dabble with changing how racials work would be opening a big can of worms, and I'm not sure Blizzard would be willing to do that. If you have some ideas on how this faction imbalance problem could potentially be solved, please let me know in the comments. Number 2. Blood Elves and Draenei at launch. So picture this: Blizzard decides to keep the game completely authentic. You're someone who wants to play Shaman on Alliance side or Paladin on Horde side. Since Blood Elves and Draenei weren't added all the way until the expansion launched back in the day, you wait for Classic TBC to drop to create your Draenei Shaman or Blood Elf Paladin. All your guildies are leveling through Outland, and some of them already reached level 70, while you're still leveling through Duskwood or Ashenvale. The first players to complete their Karazhan attunements are ready to take on the tier 4 content, and they stomp through it in the matter of days. 1 week, 2 week passes, and players are already almost fully decked in epics from Karazhan, Gruul's Lair, and Magtheridon. You just reached level 58 and you're about to go through the Dog Portal. A week later, you're finally level 70. You ask your raid leader for a spot in the raids, and oh, the raid roster is full. By the time you made it to 70, they already recruited other shamans and paladins. No luck for you. This is the scenario that most players who decide to go Draenei or Blood Elves will likely experience during the first month of Classic TBC, if Blizzard decides to keep the game how it was. Fortunately, there's an easy solution for this. Every World of Warcraft expansion has a pre-expansion patch, and Burning Crusade was no different. However, the pre-patch for the Burning Crusade did not release with Draenei and Blood Elves back in 2007 for some reason. This has to be changed for Classic TBC. With a 3 to 4 weeks period of pre-patch, it's more than enough to give anyone serious about playing their character time to level to 60. And then, when the expansion drops, you can be on an even playing field with everyone else, and not have to worry about rushing to 70 as fast as possible before another paladin or shaman takes your spot. Number 3. Drums of Battle. I touched on this point in another video. Drums of Battle is an item created by leatherworking that requires 350 leatherworking to use, and it increases the haste rating for all nearby players in your party, not raid, by 80, which is a very significant amount in terms of TBC stats. Now here's the catch. Since Wrath of the Lich King, this item gave everyone affected by it a debuff which prevented you from receiving its effects permanently by popping one after the other. And that debuff was added because players would do exactly that, especially later on in the game, specifically in Sunwell Plateau. You could see players on World First Muru and Kil'jaeden popping these one after the other. Technically, you only need 4 leatherworkers to have a 100% rotation of drums, but realistically, you want everyone in your raid to go leatherworking to do that, to account for players dying or standing far away for a mechanic, for example. With the min-maxing meta, having leatherworking is going to be pretty much a requirement for any moderately serious guild, which means that if leatherworking doesn't help your class much, well, you're going to have to deal with only one profession slot from now on. We had world buffs that disabled our players for days in Classic WoW. Now we're gonna have Drums of Battle, which are going to disable our second profession slot forever in Classic TBC. And I understand, Drums of Battle are nowhere near the level of annoyance or level of face rolling provided by world buffs, but they are still a design flaw that should be fixed. Classic TBC's raiding is going to be slightly more challenging than vanilla for sure, with the raids going down in player size and the encounters offering more mechanics, but they will still be considerably easy for modern players, especially tier 4 content, and Drums of Battle will make them even easier than they should be. Fortunately again, a very easy fix for this is to simply implement the sated/exhaustion debuff. That way you only need one leather worker per group, and the effect is going to last 30 seconds every couple minutes, like it was intended by design. Number 4. Spell batching. For those who don't know, what spell batching refers to is how the WoW servers process incoming interactions. Instead of processing everything immediately, the server creates batches of actions in order to process them all together. This is done to optimize the amount of time the server spends processing those effects. The side effect of this is that actions in the same batch are considered simultaneous and don't affect one another. Nowadays in retail, batches are extremely short and almost unnoticeable, but in the past, including in vanilla and TBC, those batches were way bigger and larger. And that made sense back in the day because our computers, internet connection, and server technology as a whole were very limited. But with Classic WoW releasing, Blizzard announced that they would be re-implementing spell batching. Not to the exact levels of how it was, but enough so that the game still felt familiar to how it felt back in 2005. Players, me included, were stoked about this. Back when Classic WoW was still under development, we were all under the no changes umbrella. But as the game released, as we spent days, weeks, and months doing various activities with our characters, spell batching started to feel not only outdated and out of place, but extremely annoying in many scenarios, specifically in PvP. It seems like mixing modern hardware with old latency just doesn't feel good for an MMO. And so, the big concern right now is how spell batching is going to play for Classic TBC, specifically in Arena, where the stakes are much larger in higher brackets. If spell batching is left untouched, the Arena is going not only to feel horrible, but in extreme cases, winning or losing could be down to luck and not skill at all. Number 5. Bots. Botting in Classic is a plague, and for the most part, Blizzard is doing a horrible job at dealing with it. But to play devil's advocate here, I don't think they're not doing anything like a large portion of the community is making it out to be. I believe the devs are doing what they can with what they have to combat botting as much as possible. If it seems like they aren't doing anything, well, that's just a side effect of this way of dealing with bots. Bots are dealt with in waves to make it harder for bot makers to counter Blizzard's detection systems. And the reason why Blizzard doesn't communicate with the community every time a ban wave is done is because that would make it too obvious to know the frequency of those ban waves for botters, and way less bots would get caught as a result. But with that said, I do believe they can do a way better job than what they are currently doing. It is obvious how slow they are when you do a /who Dire Maul or a /who Blackrock Depths and you see the long list of ungilded players growing month after month. Or when you're sitting outside Dire Maul North on a PvE server and you see the same ungilded hunters wearing the exact same Dire Maul gear going in and out every 10 minutes day after day. Bots are ruining the economy in Classic in a big way, and this can't go on for TBC. Botting is always going to be present as long as the game is going to be successful, but something must be done to detect and ban bots way more quickly and efficiently because something is clearly really broken with their system currently. So that was it. 6 big concerns about Classic TBC. Now here's a question for you. What are your big concerns for Classic TBC? Let me know in the comments. As I said at the start, this is the second part of a video I released a few weeks back. If you want to watch it, it should be on screen now, and it covers more broad and general concerns for the game. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There will be more content coming in the very near future and all throughout Classic TBC, so make sure to subscribe to not miss it. With that said, whatever you do, remember to have fun, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Bye for now.